All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Kayla here from KR Country Coaching on Out of the Fog, the Trauma Network. And with us today, we have the beautiful Sibylle Austin. I'm not going to say your full name, Sib, because I feel like I never do it justice.
Sibylle, yeah.
Sibylle,
Anything but Sibylle.
Yes. Yeah, I've done that one before. So guys, before we begin, viewer discretion is advised. I know that sometimes we can go on to a couple of topics that can be very tender, and so if at any point you do feel triggered, then please remember that you can stop watching at any time and come back perhaps once you've regrouped, or if you have someone that you would like to watch with you. For anyone that is battling at the moment, I'm just going to read out a couple of numbers. Please remember that we do have support organizations that are here for you if need be. So we have Lifeline, and the contact number for them is 131114. Beyond Blue, which is 1300 224 636, and the men's line, which is 1300 789 978. And of course, I know that Sib would be more than willing to put a hand out as well if you need to reach out just to look for someone or speak to someone. I'm exactly the same myself. And Sib, if I can ask, when we have finished here, if you don't mind just commenting on the Trauma Network page, just with your details or anywhere that perhaps someone could reach you if need be, and if you're happy with that.
Of course.
Wonderful. All right. So today's topic is mental health. And Sib, I'll get you to introduce yourself.
So hi, everybody. I'm Sib, short for Sibylle. And I have had a number of mental health challenges over my decades. I attempted to do away with myself when I was 21. And in hindsight, it's actually what led me on this path, so I see it as a blessing. I trained to be a life coach in 2001 and had been doing that for 20-something years, passionately. And then my husband and I was like, I need to go live at the beach again. And so we bought a tour company at the Sunshine Coast, lived 150 metres from the water. Wow. And, of course, that all happened 6 months prior to COVID. So our clientele were local retirees, and we used to do 3-day tours within 250 kilometres a week. And then once a month, we'd go anywhere from 5 to 14 days elsewhere, Central Australia, Far North Queensland, Sydney, wherever. But, of course, along came COVID, and 90% of our clientele locked themselves in their houses, and so we were pivoting, and we were selling all of our assets. And in March of 22, the financial stress saw me have a complete physical and mental breakdown. I spent 8 days in a psych ward, and I'd had all these tools. I've got truckloads of tools.
I know you do.
Yeah, and the psychiatrist and her team kept saying to me, you're the most resilient person we've seen in here. And without having used all those tools, this would have happened or should have happened 12 to 18 months earlier. Wow. And so I then went on a very intense healing journey for 18 months. And as I was beginning to come out the other side, I thought, you know what? I don't want to let this experience go to waste. So I started studying mental health, and in January was blessed with a job. I am now a peer worker, psychosocial supports for rural and remote mental health. And of course, I'm a lived experience peer worker. So as such, I get to share what has worked for me, and I walk alongside my clients holding their hand as they go on their recovery journey. And it's hugely rewarding. Also can be very, very challenging. But yeah, I love it. So that's my story in a nutshell. But of course, there's plenty more layers to that.
I know, yeah. And I remember the last time that we met up, we went very, very deep, so very quickly.
Yes.
But firstly, thank you so much for your vulnerability, even on the topic of the psych ward, because I've been there too. And I know how much courage it takes, even though we're very accepting of it. But because of the stigma that those words carry, it takes a lot of courage for us to just like embrace everything that comes with it and just put it out there and say, hey, I was actually in this place at this time of my life, because there are a lot of opinions and misguided opinions. And obviously there are those that are very knowledgeable on it too. But either way, it does carry, some sort of opinion with it. So thank you so much for putting that out to us here. And I do appreciate you.
Thank you. And I'd just like to add to that. I know a lot of people who were studying mental health. In fact, I think all of them had lived experience, but very, very few were willing to admit that when they got their jobs. And I have always been a very open book. My blog, my story that I'm about to get back into is all about me sharing my life and my experiences and the lessons I've learned. And so if I can help, if my experience can help even one other person, then I feel as if that sharing it is worthwhile. And people can judge if they want, but you know what? People judge anyway.
Anyway,
and I've finally gotten to that point in my life, thank goodness, that I don't care.
Yes.
None of us have, we're not everybody's cup of tea, but I think the more authentic we are and we can be, the more we can actually attract our right crowd and our right vibe and help those that we are placed here on earth to help.
Yeah, I could
That's
not
my
agree
theory.
more. I'm definitely becoming better at the, just embracing who you are and putting it out there. And I definitely think that comes with experience and age too. You go through that phase where you're so focused on what other people think of you or how you're perceived by the rest of the world. And what I've really found is that doing those things, whilst it's necessary to go through that journey to learn, and each one of us seems to go through it, at the same time, what I am learning more and more is that you really are this really mixed bundle of people. And inside, it's not always meshing because of exactly that, because you have not always shown yourself truly for who you are, and just stuck with your passions and all those sorts of things. So 100% agree, Sib, 100% agree. Sib, can we go back now? When we started, you mentioned, I think it was 21, when you first, was it thought about taking your life or you tried to take your life?
I actually tried. In fact, it was January the 7th to 1984. And do you want me to share that story? More than happy to.
If you don't mind, yeah.
I was 21. I'd not long gotten back from 10 months in Europe. And so I need to wind back. Before I went to Europe, I had a great group of friends. I had 2 jobs, saving up to go away. And all of my friends, and like I was 20, remember what it's like when we're 20.
Yes.
It was party central. My mother used to say to me, because if I wasn't working, I was out, night clubbing, all free, drinking water, getting drunk on water, getting high on life.
Yes.
And so before I went, a lot of my friends said, don't go, we're going to miss you. And thank goodness I just went anyway. Because when I came back, we would talk about, somebody would say, oh, they want to go paragliding. And I went, oh, yeah, that'd be great, because it's lots of fun. I did that when I was in Corfu, or, I was just sharing my life. I wasn't bragging, but everybody around me seemed to think that I was somehow bragging, or I don't know. And of course, since then, I've realized that, it's all our inner stuff, our inner insecurities. But in any case, I was feeling very, very rejected just because I was being me. My boyfriend at the time was, that was, looking back now, extremely unhealthy. But anyway, I was just really, really, really struggling. And mum and dad and my brother had gone away for a fortnight, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I, in those days we still got the bottles of milk at the stairs, and I'd planned as much as I could, wrote a letter, had a shower, went upstairs, went to bed, made sure, I'd taken as many pills as I could swallow. And I went upstairs, made sure I laid straight, because I thought I don't want them to have to break my bones to stick me in a coffin, and woke up 3 days later. And when I woke up, it was like, oh my God, I'm still bloody awake. I'm still alive. I was quite pissed off. And I thought, I'm just going to have to go down and try this again. And as I passed the telephone, in those days there was only the one that hooked up to the wall, I thought there was just something inside me said, no, ring a friend. So I rang my friend Jan and told her what I'd done. And she said, I'll be over. I'm taking you to my doctor. So she took me to her doctor, and again, very blessed. He said to me, by rights, I should actually be admitting you into whatever a psych ward was called back then. I can't remember. And he said, but if you promise to come and see me every day for the next, I'm not sure how long it was, I won't. And I promised, because I knew mum and dad would kill me.
Yeah.
Quite frankly. And so I went to see him every day for however long it was. And I don't remember every session, but the crux of what he taught me was that if we try to run away from our problems, we're only going to come back to them next life. And that wasn't a new concept for me at the time, because when I was in grade 10, I had read The Reincarnation of Peter Proud, and which was just, a novel. And so when the doctor said what he said, I was like, oh, okay, just like, Peter Proud. And so that actually sent me on my path of, I guess, being spiritual, because I had tried up until then. In fact, I'd very much tried up until then to fit in. And we used to have, I used to have a lot of religious friends that, I'd go to different churches and try to fit in and try to be, I don't know, that feeling of, I just never felt as if I belonged anywhere.
You are preaching fire on this one. I'm so feeling you on this. Yeah. Sorry.
And anyway, this doctor, and I can't even remember what continued like from there, but from there on, I just had a different perspective on life and my challenges. And it wasn't until a few years ago that somebody actually asked me, how did I get on this path? And it took me months. I said, I don't know. And it took me months and months and months to think about it. And I went, oh my God, it was way back then when I did that. And and he said, like, with that many pills of whatever it was, I can't even remember what it was. I could probably, he said, it's a miracle that you're still alive.
Yeah. And especially waking up like 3 days later, when you said that, the first thing I thought was, one, you're so lucky to be alive, but secondly, you're so fortunate you did not wake up with brain damage or something like,
And all of that, he just said, it's a miracle. You have and I vaguely remember him saying something like, you are here for a really, really big reason. And I think at about that same time, I read a book on coincidences, and yeah, that also then went, I don't believe in coincidences. There's synchronicities, but it's all, it's the magic of life. And, the magic of life exists all day, every day. We just need to open our eyes to see it. And life is always happening for us. And I'm just very, very blessed to Jan. I've found her on Facebook only recently. And I'd really love that doctor probably isn't even alive anymore, but I'm very, very grateful for him and for her taking me to him. And, because the rest, I've had my challenges, and I think that's just part of life. We all have challenges, but it's not what happens to us that matters. It's how we deal with it. And in the deepest of pooey times, I remember a friend once saying about 20 years ago, they're the valleys of life. That's where the poo is, and the poo is actually our fertilizer. And when you think about it, we don't ever grow when life is fun, we're roller coasting and everything's great. And that's not when we grow. We grow in the down times where the fertilizer is, when we're sludging through all the sludge in life, and when we think we can't go any further because life's too hard and blah, 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 blah. And I remember very clearly in 1989, I was living at Ayers Rock, and was going through some challenges. And for the very first time, somebody said to me, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I remember throwing this tantrum at home going, and I was just going right off. I don't want to be any bloody stronger. I just want an easy life. But you know what? So that was 1989. Had I have not become stronger, there is no way I could have survived anything I've been through since then.
Yeah.
And so, life is always happening for us. And that is sometimes very difficult to remember when we're going through the sludge.
And that funny that you say that, because I was just about to say to you, when you are, and I know, and we're going to touch on this for sure within, the professional context of working within mental health, because you just have this wealth of experience. But when you're speaking to someone that's stuck in that mind frame of exactly that, how do you get that hope? How do you foresee, or not even foresee, gathering that strength to know that this is only, as Buddha says, this too shall pass. Nothing is there forever. But when everything is crashing, that is one of the hardest things to have at the forefront of your mind.
Absolutely. And I think, I believe that's where faith comes into it, trust. And it's not necessarily trusting or faith in a God. It's faith in life.
Yeah.
And as you said earlier, the older we get and the more experience we have, the more proof there is of that. I read a book 11 months ago by, God, I can't think of her name. Anyway, she quoted Carl Jung, who in 1937 wrote, "A psychoneuroses must be understood ultimately as the suffering of a soul which has not discovered its meaning." He observed among patients who were particularly resistant to normal treatments that they eventually discovered stability through spirituality of one form or another. Or as my 27-year-old gorgeous daughter says, people just simply aren't on the right path.
Yeah.
And he continued with, "Recovery is often described as a journey of personal discovery, which includes new learning on how to live well." And when I read that, it was an audiobook, and I was driving, and I had to pull over and write it all down. And I went, that is so true. So when I work with my clients, and some people, unfortunately, in my experience, even as a coach, and certainly in mental health, there's a huge percentage of people who say they want to recover, but they're not willing to do anything to help themselves. Or they've been through such mind-blowing trauma that I don't even know how people live through some of what they live through, that they don't believe
that there is.
that they're worthy. So firstly, that they're worthy. Secondly, that they're capable, let alone everything else.
Yeah. It's like the possibility of that just doesn't even exist anymore. I've got someone very, very close to me, and I hope that they watch this. I'm going to be forwarding them the link without saying too much. Someone that is very, very dear to me, that has been through so much in life, and this person has reached that point where not even to allow people in anymore. They are just so shut out, because being vulnerable or letting people in means that the potential of them getting hurt again is just too much. And it's so sad.
It is very sad. And I think the mere fact that we're still alive is testament to, there is still a purpose for us.
Yeah.
We still have opportunity to be a blessing to people around us. And I believe, we all come into this world with gifts and talents, and it's our job to find out what they are and then share them with the world. And, some of those gifts and talents can be unwrapped when we're very young. Others don't unwrap them until they're, Colonel Sanders, I think, was 78 before he gave away his, Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe. But we all, and I firmly believe that the best of my life is still ahead of me, and I'm 62. Because as we go along and heal our trauma, some of which I was thinking this morning as I was swimming, some of my trauma has only become into my conscious mind in the last 12 months.
Yes.
And so, if we don't know about it, we can't heal it. But in the searching, I'm forever on a quest to heal my stuff, and it's never ending, really. But the more we can heal it, and we attract people into our lives who are ready for us to, they're in our life to trigger us, to help trigger us. And this is so true. And it's taken me so long to learn this about my husband. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
And we've celebrated 30 years of marriage, but we've been separated twice. I've been the one that's left both times. And
congratulations on 30 years though.
Thank you. And I've been hearing it for a while, but only earlier this year have I gone, oh my God, that is so right. He triggers me in so many ways. But every time I have the courage to dive deeper and heal, find whatever it is that he's triggering, and then heal that part of me, our relationships gets better.
Yeah.
And I get better.
Yeah. And I think the same, it's funny that you say this, because this is something that I am seeing and I'm figuring out. And then with the conversations that we have here and out in the world, and it's that repeating, like you were saying before, Sib, those synchronicities, or as Trisha Brennan put it in one of her books, breadcrumbs, these breadcrumbs throughout life. And it's like the more that you delve deeper into something, and you don't just accept it surface level, you don't just accept the fact that, oh, speaking on trauma, this happened to me and that's now marked me for life. No, it hasn't marked you for life. It might have made a mark, but it hasn't marked you for life. You now get to go into that and see what else is there. And that really is how healing, evolving, growing, all those things continue on. I found it really interesting, though, the way that you said as well earlier on, how it's only now there are certain traumas that you are becoming aware of. And I know that with mental health, you would have experience in this, and with my own experience and learning knowledge, etc. And what you find is that at certain ages, your brain capacity, your frontal lobe, all those things are not willing to face those traumas because you simply, on a conscious level, and subconscious, preconscious, all those things, you could not cope with facing it. And so we do this defense mechanism thing where we literally shut that out. And I do believe that when we start to see these things like yourself, it's because we are now ready. We've reached a level where we're now ready, and it's like, okay, it's time to dip into the next thing.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And a lot of people, I don't think, are ever ready. So my parents, for example, they are so unaware of, they have zero self-awareness. And that used to frustrate me until I did a lot of work with it, probably 20 years ago, 22 years ago. And I came to the realization, so whether this is true or not, I don't know, but this is what gets me through. I believe it to be true. So that they have gone through this life, foregoing their growth, their spiritual growth, in order so I could have mine. And I feel very blessed. And I no longer, there's probably a tiny part of me that still occasionally judges them, but I am human. But for the most part, I just think, we can only do what we can do. And they're just not willing. We can have conversations with, I can have a conversation with them. In fact, if they were to sit down on this conversation, they would think we were speaking Russian. There's just no zero. And I remember, so both of those traumas that I spoke about were both sexual assaults. So one happened when I was 12, and that only came to the forefront of my mind when I was 30. And I remember telling Mum and Dad, because it was a family friend, I remember telling them that about it, and it was there was no reaction, no response. Wow. And at the time, I just thought, they haven't heard me. There was zero response. And then the other one only came up after this fellow died. He was my next door neighbour, and he died about 12 months ago. And as I was about to reach out to the family, oh my God, all these memories came up. And it was like, oh my God.
Yeah, wow.
And again, I told Mum and Dad next time I saw them, and there was no response. And that's when I started really realizing they are, how do I say this in the nicest way, emotionally retarded. And that's not a nice way, but emotionally stunted, or they were definitely emotionally unavailable, but they just don't have the EQ, certainly that I have. And at first I was like, how can you not have a response to this? But they're just not capable. And that's okay. We're all different.
Yeah, we are. You are right. And it's funny because so I use that expression a lot. It's funny, but it is in a way. It's like these not like haha funny, but like these moments where we realize that I think the more your capacity grows in this, it's quite amazing. And I know what you mean, Sib, whether it be, emotionally blocked off, in denial, whatever it is, not wanting to accept that, not wanting to face that, couldn't have. The thing for me that followed me a lot of my life was, oh, you're attention seeking, or it's all in your head type of thing. And when for so long you fight it, and it's like, no, and you fight it and you fight it, and then you come to this place where you go, you know what, that's you. That's how you deal with that. That's how you deal with that stuff. That is your person, your experience,
Absolutely.
the way that it can only make sense to you for whatever reason that is. And whether or not that be true, correct, whatever, that's not for me to fight on behalf of you anymore. And realizing that there is a freedom in that. I think that you have just frozen. Is it my network? Sib, I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, good. You're back.
Yes.
Yeah, I lost you there for a moment. I don't know what happened.
Did you hear everything I had to say, or was that lost there too?
No, that was lost there too. I completely lost you.
Okay, sorry. Right. Okay. So, isn't that everything happens for a reason? So, what I was saying was, whatever capacity that person has of it making sense or not making sense, when you get to that stage where no matter what and how hurtful it is and how angry, for me, those sorts of things would make me so angry, because it would be like, why are you not getting it? Why are you seeing it this way? Why can't you see me, sort of thing? And like you were saying, wanting to belong. But there is this something that happens where you come to terms with this fact and you go, I am no longer going to fight for this to make sense to you anymore. And you just kind of accept it as, well, that is just who you are, and this is your journey that you're on. And that is for you to make up, understand, make sense of. But when we stop that fighting, that thing, as hurtful as it is, and coming to terms with that, there is something that is immensely freeing in that process. Of course, speaking about trauma, I'm definitely, just to make this clear to anyone that would be watching this, I am definitely not saying that someone who inflicts trauma on you, that's okay, or that's something that they get to do because it's their way of making. We're definitely not saying that, just to be clear on that.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah.
But again, it's not what happens to us in life. Yeah. It's what we do with that. Yeah. And there's definitely times of, because that's part of the human experience, is that we, go through all that yucky stuff.
Yeah.
But again, life is like this. If it was like this, it'd be boring. And if it was like this, it'd be boring. Life is like this.
Yeah.
And for the perpetrators, look.
I know, it's so hard.
Yeah, I still don't believe in evil. Sometimes I get close to believing in evil.
You and me both.
But I also believe that our outer world is a reflection of our inner world. And whilst we are not at peace with ourselves, there will never be world. Whilst everybody on the planet is not at peace with themselves, there will never be world peace. Yeah, like.
Can I, you know what, just on the subject, Sib, I've got to ask you this, and I know that we're going to veer off just a tad, but we're not as well. We're also not. We're very much staying on this road of trauma and stuff. What is our youth crime, okay, and the amount of youths that commit crime, you and me, and research shows, and we know that youth who commit crime more often, okay, yes, you get the naughty teens, okay, that'll go and, that petty theft or whatever it may be. But I'm talking about crimes of survival, crimes from trauma, very violent things that are by no means acceptable. But a lot of the time, the types of families, the trauma involved in that, economic, all those things, but these children who commit these crimes, and now we have this this new punishment system where we're saying, okay, now we're going to lock you up with the adults in the jail systems. From your experience professionally, because I know that you work with youth, I would just really like to just put this out there on this conversation, and we're going to get back to other things. But I really want to know from someone who works with youth, is experienced in this, what do you think are going to be the backlashes of us detaining youth in adult prisons?
Very interesting question, because I think about this a lot, actually.
Yeah.
I think our teenage years are all about us trying to figure out who we are. And in past generations, including my own, like I was a goody two-shoes. It was terrible. I missed out on so much fun. But my parents were so controlling, and I was so fearful of them that I wasn't ever going to dare step a foot wrong.
Yes.
I taught my children to live on the edge, to discover who they want to be. And of course, you don't know until you go down that road. But I also warned them, and I showed them. We used to watch, God, I can't even think of the name of the TV show, where, people, start with cigarettes and go on to a bit of marijuana, and then they go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. They're heroin addicts, and they're doing white collar crime or other crimes. And I had a school friend, actually, who, once Facebook was around, I found everybody and I organised school reunions. And this is going off a bit off topic, but sort of not. And we were saying, Susan, why are you laughing? Not just smiling in every school photo. Why are you laughing? And she said, I was always high. And I went,
Sorry.
What? And so, as it turns out, her father was feeding her alcohol from the age of 10 because he was going in and having sex with her every night.
Oh my God.
By the time she was 15, she was a heroin addict.
Oh, man.
Some high functioning, somehow became the manager of a Commonwealth bank and was in jail twice for white collar crimes. And then at 29, had a stillborn baby. And that is what snapped her out and just went, enough is enough. So she then, with the help of youth off the streets who were only brand new at the time, got herself clean, became a social worker at 35, and then worked for youth off the streets.
Oh, I've now got tingles.
And I said to her, I would love for you to come and speak at our school. So I didn't know why at the time. I said, I'd love for you to come and speak at our school. My girls were still in high school at the time. And she said, what do you want me to say? And I said, just share your story, because many people go down that path. Very few come out. And she said, even if I get one person to say to their friend next to her, God, I thought it was normal that my father came in and had sex with me every night. And that's when I became aware of what had, the cause of it all. And I went, absolutely. And And that's tragic. And we don't know what goes on in people's lives. We don't know what goes on behind closed doors. We don't know. Like I see with some of my clients, honestly, it's very, very confronting. And I count my blessings every day because I have had such a privileged life compared to many people. I really don't know how some of them survive.
Pull through. Yeah, that's right.
Pull through. And so in answer to your question, I think it's up to the determination of the individual spirit. Like, was it Friedrich Nietzsche or the fellow that survived the German concentration camps? Yeah. And he wrote, God, I can't even think of the name of his books.
You keep talking, I'll look it up for you.
Yeah. And I recently used one of his quotes in one of the laughter yoga, because he said he had to learn to laugh every day. And, he had to keep himself strong from within. Otherwise he would have crumbled like everybody else, like most other people. And I think it's very easy to crumble, especially this day and age. It's very easy to crumble and play the victim and succumb to what seems like the easiest path.
It's true.
Rather than, like, I've got to be honest with you, I woke up with a panic attack. I've had a very, very challenging week. And last night was my first night's sleep in, the previous 2 nights I had no sleep and I was having anxiety and panic attacks. And yesterday morning, my husband was out on a job, and at 5:30, I rang my 27-year-old daughter, and I just said, I just need you to, and she obviously knew what was going on, and she talked me through it. And then she reminded me, Mum, remember who you are. And like, she was very, very harsh, but I needed that. And she reminded me what I have been through. And like, she was very tough, but it was exactly what I needed because my choice was go into hospital and, go down that path again, and luckily, because that was in my mind, it was almost my only choice, and I knew it wasn't, but it was my easiest choice.
I'm sorry though that you felt that way, because that is such overwhelm. That is such overwhelm, and that anxiety is just next level. I do get it. Yeah, I do get it.
Crazy. And I'm so grateful that she knew how strong she could be, because she knows how strong I am. And so back to your question, I think it comes back to the strength of the individual spirit and whatever support system they have as to where they go, where they take this.
Yeah, I think that that's such an amazing way to answer that question. And I say that because, part of my beautiful little character is I get very emotionally reactive. And I see these repetitive patterns. And as soon as I saw that, all I thought was, okay, what is happening is so wrong. But by putting such a young, vulnerable person with someone who's older, that's been living their life in repetitive crime, repeat offenders, and then you don't know what these adult people are going to do to these kids either, you would think that there must be some sort of system in it. And last year in Crim, I wrote a paper on reform programs and how many of them we have these rehabilitation programs, but they're very far and few between, and we don't have a lot of follow-up happening, etc. And I know that we're diverting off a bit, but like you're saying, Sip, you know, and I love the way that you use these examples of when we're young and how we try things out and how we rebel, and depending on what we come from, because I knew what you were saying. Your parents were very strict, etc. I had one parent that was very strict, the other that was just, oh man, out living life. And when we were with the two, it was like complete another, day and night, really. And yet I still rebelled, and then I still followed my course due to stuff that I went through. This is not about that for me today, but it's very much that same theme that we see played out. But when it comes down to choice, we all do have choice. And I think that is something that is very necessary to learn. And I do also believe that we have a lot of blame that happens in kind of justifying our choices. It happened to me, so I get to go and do this. And now they're going to put me in, this, and that happened to me, so that's going to make me a worse criminal, where we really do need to understand that. And we will see via statistics and what basically happens by next year, whether crime rates come down, go up, where they are still stable, whatever. That will also provide a really good answer, I think, or some sort of inclination as to where we're going with this. But I really think that we need to build some sort of resilience in understanding, as you were saying too, Sib, understanding that what, the choices that we make and where that leads us. And then how we reaching those, the story that you just told of your friend and what was happening to her. And it's amazing how many times we hear these types of stories, and these young women and men, because it happens to men too. When I was in a psych ward, I was in there with a beautiful man by the name of Ken, and he was in his 50s. And whilst I was in there, this was back in 2012, before I had meningitis. And whilst I was in there, he tried to slit his wrist with a plastic cup. He had broken the cup apart. But he would scream at night down the hall, because men were in one section, women were on the other section. And then we had the fish tank, they called it, in the middle, where the nurses were, and they'd come at nighttime with their torches, etc. But he would scream at night. And for some reason, my partner says this to me all the time, Caleb, people just love to come and talk to you. Why? Why do they? So, I don't know. But, and we ended up connecting. And when he was younger, he was working at coal mines in the peninsula, the Eyre Peninsula. And these guys came by and offered to give him a ride. And he was 12 at the time, and they took him to a toilet and raped him. And it was that taboo for a boy to have had that happen to him, never mind going into being a man and all that sort of stuff, that he never coped with it, and he turned into a full-blown alcoholic. And this is the stuff that we're talking about, the stuff that follows patterns, like what you were saying about your friend Sib. Same thing. He turned into a full-blown alcoholic. And what made him someone who repeatedly came to that same psych ward and just have continuous breakdowns after breakdowns was the fact that he got married in his 20s. He had the most beautiful daughter, and one night he was drunk and he went into a tree and he killed them both instantly. And he had never, man, I still get tingles and I get emotional when I talk about this story, because this man was beautiful, just the most soft-hearted person. But the stuff that happens to us and how we deal with that, whether we choose to continuously numb, or same thing with your friend said, we reach that point where something happens and it goes smack and we go, shit, I got to wake up. And then our trajectory changes.
Absolutely.
But it is powerful stuff, but as you say, these moments in life that are, up and down. Yeah. It's really, really powerful stuff.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? And all aholics. I remember my top weight was 155.5 kilos. And many years ago, my dear friend Helen said to me, what are you protecting yourself from? What are you protecting yourself from? And I couldn't understand it. And I remember in 1994 saying to a psychologist that I worked with, that we worked in the same building. I said to her, I feel as if a part of me wants to lose weight, but there's another part of me that wants to stay really fat. And she had no idea. She was like, what are you talking about? And once I had that realization, I had done every therapy known to man, and I uncovered lots and lots and lots and lots. There was the only time that I was, what I perceived had a beautiful body. I was surrounded by gay men. All of my male friends were gay because I felt safe. And when I married my husband, I used to say to him, if I were slim and, if I was hot, I'd probably be flaunting it. You're lucky that I'm not hot. Otherwise, I'd probably, and I didn't know where that was coming from at the time until one lot of therapy, and I realized that my mother had a weight issue, and the first time she dragged me to Weight Watchers, she lost 3.5 stone or something, and I watched her flirt crazily with my father's friends, which disgusted me. And so at that point, my subconscious mind said, well, this is what happens when you're young and beautiful and slim and trim. And so I made that decision that if my marriage and my family was going to be safe, I had to be grossly obese so that my family was safe. And there's so many layers of it. I could talk about, and I am in my own stories, in my own sharing of everything that I'm about to restart. There's so many layers, and and it's so true. But we don't know. Like I didn't even know about the sexual abuse at that stage, and so of course, there's so many layers. And so we don't know, all these people, all these youth, like I can only begin to imagine, because we all have trauma. Trauma, I grew up believing that trauma was, rape or experiencing war or, the really big things in life. But that's not, trauma can be something small, but it's the emotions, it's the beliefs that we create around whatever that was happening. That is actually the trauma. And so, and that becomes a belief because we think about it so often, and not necessarily a belief that serves us. And our subconscious mind, like our ego, its job is to protect us no matter what. And so when it believes that you've got to remain fat because that's the only way you're going to be safe, and I mean, that's only one of, there's got to be thousands of different things out there. So we don't know what's going on. But, when with trauma and layers and layers and layers upon it, if we don't heal ourselves, then we can never really raise healthy children. We can never have healthy relationships, and we can never raise healthy children. And so, and of course, then there's generational trauma and generational trauma and generational trauma. And my girls
stored in our DNA.
Absolutely. And my girls thank me all the time for doing all the work that I've done to have dissolved so much generational trauma. And look, I still apologize to them, although I've been told not to, so I try not to anymore. But I still know, I'm very aware that I could have done better had I have known better.
You do the
But
best with what you know at the time.
exactly. But there's so, people who have zero awareness.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's
Being aware, being consciously aware of your stuff, the stuff before you, it is like a superpower, literally in a way, because it opens up a different world and a different lens to how you see the world, your stuff, other people's, all those things. It's so true.
And so I can now, and look, I'm only 62, who knows how much more I'm going to learn. But I can now, people can come in and complain, or, anybody. And quite often I'll go, okay, because I've learnt so much about me, I can now go, well, even to grossly overweight people, like, I consider 10 kilos nothing. 10 kilos can be, a cream donut habit or whatever. But, people with an extra, as big as I was or more, look, I think, what happened to you? What are you protecting yourself? And it's not and unfortunately society, they just look at it very differently. And everything, so much is a trauma response. Being a narcissist, babies aren't born as narcissists.
No, of course, that's right. Yeah.
It's everything's a trauma, and we all have narcissistic qualities. Yeah, but it's all a trauma response. It's not, oh, you're a horrible person because you're a narcissist. Really, it should be, you have so much to heal.
Yeah, that's right. How did you become that? Where did it begin?
Yes.
How did it start? Yeah, that's so very true.
And I'll just finish that. Unfortunately, doing the inner work is hard work, and it's very confronting, and it can be very scary. But it's so worth it. It's so freeing, and I just wish more. And I think we are coming into an era where people are beginning to do more work, and there are psychologists, like the holistic psychologist, who, there are people who are more and more guiding people down this path. So I have hope for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I could talk to you for hours, truly, because you are just one of the most insightful individuals. Can we just? I know that we've been on here already for an hour. Time has just flown. As you know, you can come back if you would so choose to discuss, because we haven't really gone into the professional side of mental health, and I would have loved to have spoken a bit about that with you, because you're someone who who works with it, and I suppose for anyone wanting that help and little tips and things like that. But I suppose, if you were talking to someone in this very moment that is finding, and obviously the show, this particular series is about getting through Christmas, or getting through Christmas with ease, with whatever you might have plaguing you, but it's also stuff for everyday life. So if whoever is listening to this or is going to be watching the replay, I know it's Friday, but for anyone that's going through a hard time now, Sib, for anyone that's looking or searching for that hope, and any sort of tips or a technique that you can leave us with, that's someone that can just sort of take away, that doesn't, cost a lot, etc. Please.
Okay, so my number one tip, and I have hundreds of them, honestly, but my absolute number one is a grateful journal. Gratitude is so incredibly powerful. So even if you can't afford a grateful journal, go on what I call a gratitude rampage. So that starts with, and I do this probably, every time I go on a drive that's longer than 5 minutes down the street, right? So I start with Thank you for my hands so that I can drive this car. Thank you for my eyes so that I can see the road. Thank you for my brain so that I can think. Thank you for my driver's license. Thank you for my breakfast. Thank you for my beautiful shower that I had this morning. Thank you for the beautiful bed. And I will just rattle off, and it could be for minutes, of things that are really, really basic and really, really obvious, right?
Yeah.
And then somewhere in there, I then switched to thanking for something that I would like to about to happen. So thank you for my client's progress. Thank you for letting me arrive on time. And that is, and it never ceases to amaze me. Even if I'm running late, I always arrive on time. Thank you for the perfect car park. And all of my friends, like, I always get the perfect car park. Thank you for, I just can't even think at the moment. And then I go into bigger things. Like, things that part of me still thinks is like, is this going to happen?
Like, right, because like gratitude manifestations type.
Yes, absolutely. But gratitude, and if you can, and so this changed my life when I first did it. I remember watching Oprah when I was at home with my youngest daughter, and she taught me about a grateful journal. And I went out and bought one, put it aside, never used it. And then when I trained to be a life coach in 2001, we were talking about gratitude, and I went, oh, I've got one of them somewhere. And honestly, it changed my life, saved my marriage, changed my life. So 5 things before you go to bed every night, 5 things that you're grateful for. So that can be, my husband did the dishes this morning. In fact, not all of them, half of them. My swim this morning, watching a sunset, the simplest of things. But they're not to be the same 5 things every day, because the turbo booster is in the feeling of gratitude. And what happens psychologically, our brain goes, or subconsciously, our brain goes, oh my God, I've got to write in this damn journal tonight. And so your little antennae go out. And, what can I look for? What can I find? And what we look for, we actually find. So in the looking for things to be grateful for, we find them. And then at some point, something switches and we see the blessings in everything. And that is the most powerful place to live from.
It is. Yeah, it is extremely powerful. And you're right. Yes. Science, psychology, all that proves that literally the neurons change in the brain, and where we activate parts of the brain changes. It's really, really amazing stuff. Now, Sib, you have frozen, just to let you know, but I can still hear you. So we're still...
I can see that. That's not a great look. Anyway,
we're still, but that's okay. We're still on here, and we're still going. Anything else, Sib? Any parting words at this point?
I'm a big believer, not every soul has the courage to come down here and experience life as a human being. And I'm a big believer that there are, thousands, if not millions of souls up there hanging over cloud 9 or wherever it is that we go between lives, and they're cheering us on, because we are the courageous ones. We are, we've got it. So the mere fact that we're here, like, you've got this, and you can do it. We all can. And wouldn't it be great if we could all help each other somehow? And I am here to help as many people as I possibly can, including myself. And nothing makes my heart sing more than teaching people resilience and helping people to get through this adventure. And that's why, like, I share my stories very openly, because I guess my tagline is sharing my journey so that you can to help you meander through yours.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, that's actually something that perhaps in the new year, we could have you back, Sib, and talk more about resilience, because we all need it. And I think that it's something that is so necessary to mindful well-being, mental health, all those things, however you want to look at it. Also, just quickly, thank you for that. And also, just quickly before you go, so you have started Laughter Yoga with Sib, which I know is gaining some popularity and some momentum. And Miss Ellie and I plan to come to one of your classes in the new year.
Great.
But do you mind just letting people know, because I know that we're going to have a couple of locals that will probably watch on, or replay, etc. If they haven't seen you on the community forum, Sib, if you don't mind just attaching where to find you in the comments after this, and then perhaps if you don't mind just as we go on, just letting everyone know what days you are and which town you're in.
Okay. So unfortunately, Laughter Yoga has come to an end for the minute.
Yes.
My boss, I've been arguing with him. However, yesterday afternoon we had our very last staff meeting, and he's trying to find a way to bring it back. And if he
just for the end of the year. Oh
no. And so if he doesn't bring it back, so if I can't do it as part of my job, then somehow I'm going to figure out a way to do it just as a community service.
Yes. Yeah.
However, I'm more than happy to, is there show notes, or do I do that in the comments?
Yeah, so just in the comments when this comes to an end, I can see if there's anyone viewing, but this type of program, there is a poster comment on the side here, which I've never used. Can you see that, Sib?
Yes, it says join the chat. So here we go. Connect your YouTube account to join the live chat. Maybe not.
Otherwise, you can just go onto the Facebook Trauma Network page.
Okay.
And just comment on there. And I can send you a link after too for that if you wanted. Yeah.
And if anybody, I will write down my personal mobile number. And if anybody wants to connect with me, more than happy for a chat, and I will keep them in the loop as to what's happening with Laughter Yoga. So I had been doing Monday mornings in Chinchilla at the CWA Hall, Wednesday mornings in Miles at the Leichhardt Centre in the Columbilla Room, and then Thursday morning in Tara at the old JW's Hall. But what happens moving forward, I'm not yet sure, but it's been fabulous.
Certainly looks like it. I've been following the page, and I think that I just think it's so amazing. And this is why I hope that it continues to have this happening here, in Western Downs. Like, we need more of this sort of stuff. So amazing.
Yeah.
All right, Seb. Well, we will end it on this note. Definitely got to have you back. I hope that whoever has watched on, guys, please leave comments if you find something beneficial, if you'd like to hear more about something. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions for Sibylle, leave her contact details, as you just heard, etc., in a comment. Please feel free to reach out. And may we live with ease. Thank you so much, Sib, for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me, Kayla.
Yeah. Lots of love. I'll speak to you soon.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.